right off the bat here with a video of Jagmeet and some of his colleagues. So, let's just jump to that and then we can comment on that video right off the bat here.
First thing I would say is, beyond the fact that there's deep concerns about this harming children, the fact that conservatives are focused on this at a time when people are struggling with their groceries, are struggling with the cost of their housing, shows a complete lack of any sort of understanding of what people are going through. It's absurd that they're going to target kids, put kids at risk, and spend their time on that as conservative governments, rather than deal with what people are actually going through. So they want to harm kids rather than deal with the cost of living, rather than deal with housing, rather than dealing with the cost of groceries, the cost of living in general. This shows what you get with conservatives. This is why people should be deeply concerned about conservatives getting into power. They focus on things that harm kids and ignore the challenges that people are faced with in their real lives. That's exactly why folks should be very cautious about conservatives. Pierre Poilievre might talk with great slogans. When you look at conservatives, what they do in Ontario, their plan for housing was corruption to give their billionaire friends billions of money. And they focus on hurting kids instead of dealing with real challenges. That's what I think this all shows.
So
Has he been vacationing? Has he been vacationing on another planet? Like how does he even say these things? First of all, he's propping up the government that's making everything infinitely more expensive. Mr. I'm in favor of carbon taxes. It is conservatives who are talking about affordability and building houses. And you might not have liked the way that Doug Ford is trying to open up the what do they call it? The green belt for housing. But he's swapped land there. So he opened up some for housing and then he put more land back in on the other side, because unfettered migration is driving up the cost of housing in this country. Nobody's talking about it. Danielle Smith in Alberta has paused the gas tax to make things more expensive. Conservatives can talk, chew gum, make life more affordable, and defend parents' rights all at once. Like, this idea that you can't talk about the cost of living while simultaneously talk about parents' autonomy in their children's lives, it's bizarre, but it's pretty rich coming from this guy who's propping up the government that's making everything more expensive.
Well,
by the way, also, one more point. Sorry to cut you off. Pierre Poilievre has literally not uttered a word about the whole pronoun controversy that's happening in some provinces, which is not a controversy at all, because parents across the board, regardless of their political stripe, want to know what their kids are up to in school. They are anti-secrets between their children and teachers. But Pierre Poilievre, he hasn't even uttered a word about this. So yet Jagmeet Singh is standing up there attacking Pierre Poilievre and saying, this is what you get when you elect conservatives. Pierre Poilievre hasn't even mentioned it at all.
Well, it's no surprise that the polls have shifted in some cases, and the NDP are in second, and they're going all-out attack on Pierre Poilievre. They're prepping for an upcoming election. But yeah, this is categorically just absurd. Pierre Poilievre has probably spoken the most about this, and we saw this with Trudeau and Harper. Harper was a social progressive. He was not a social conservative, nor is Pierre Poilievre by most metrics. But there's this attack to say, oh, they're right-wing conservative American style. They use all that terminology to permanently deride conservatism as this sort of bad thing. But what I want to focus on here is this political strategy of, clearly the question coming into that was about this controversy, and Jagmeet Singh goes, putting that aside, the conservatives aren't talking about affordability. So right off the bat, he's not answering the question that he's being asked. And then he's transitioning into, and by the way, they're bigots for even engaging in this, even if they aren't. So there are so many disconnects here. But yeah, right off the top, you hit the nail on the head. The issue here is that it is this NDP government that is propping up the Liberals that have made life unaffordable categorically. And so for him to say that conservatives aren't talking about this, well, they are, but you're ramping up the Liberals. You're propping them up. You're You're making everything that they do possible. I find it wild that there are people out there who, now that they're starting to sour on Justin Trudeau, which they've been drinking rotten milk for 7.5 years, but now they're suddenly souring. They're like, oh, you know what, the NDP, the people who've done nothing but prop this guy up, that's where I'm going to cast my vote now. Vote for some green hippy-dippy, whatever else you want to do, but don't vote for this institution together. And I call it an institution, Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh combined, that are tearing this country apart. It's unreal that people are buying this. I don't think most people are, but such a disconnect from reality. It's so reminiscent of the Harper days where they tried to make him seem out. I remember, and it was so offensive, but the Harper is Hitler stuff everywhere for a social, progressive, moderate guy who's focused on economics. That's what we're seeing here all over again. Of course, Jagmeet Singh, thankfully, he has a solution for all of our problems. In addition to criticizing Pierre Poilievre, he says that there should be another housing benefit payment, because giving a couple $100, and in this case, another $500 payment should be issued for low-income families struggling to keep a roof over their heads. One more grocery trip? Sure, I get that. At that moment, $500 can help. But the problem is government spending like this. It's these Band-Aids that are driving up inflation and making it so that more families are going from middle class to lower class. More families are struggling to get by. The one-time $500 payment may be a Band-Aid, but it isn't a solution. And it's these types of policies that are creating the scenario.
Yeah, why is the solution to the housing crisis a handout?
Yeah.
from people who are already struggling to pay their mortgage? Wouldn't the solution be addressing the supply and demand for housing? Like, let's build more houses, make it easier for developers to build more houses. By the way, instead of handouts, why aren't we giving maybe tax credits to people who are building houses? To make it easier, you know, but also repealing some of these environmental policies that make it very difficult to build a house in some places in this country. But also, you know, addressing the demand. Let's slow down immigration levels until we catch up with services, because it's not just housing. It's education, it's bricks and mortar schools, it's hospitals, it's doctors, it's all those things that we need to play catch up on so that new Canadians and regular Canadians who are here already can access the services that they pay handsomely for.
Canadians are grappling with news blackouts on social media due to the Justin Trudeau Liberal government's Bill C-18. This new piece of legislation demands that social media platforms pay the government for news shared by users, which is an inconceivable task for companies like Meta and Google. So, as a result, they have decided to preemptively block all Canadian news content, including ours at Rebel News. In response to this, we have since teamed up with VPN provider Private Internet Access to ensure that you can continue to access all of our content across a broad range of platforms while also maintaining your privacy. For only $2 a month, you can bypass Trudeau's new censorship laws while you safeguard freedom of speech and continue to get the news that matters to you the most. Visit piavpn.com/rebelnews to take advantage of the 84% discount and 4 months free. As a bonus, PIA has all of its servers located in the United States, not China, and they automatically delete user data from their servers to avoid leaks and government subpoenas for information phishing expeditions. Don't delay. Head over to piavpn.com/rebelnews to stay up to date on the news in Canada and protect your access to it. Don't delay. You don't want to be left behind.